Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick.
This is Justin.
Welcome back to the Hangar Bay, our weekly show where we talk about your submitted X-Wing lists, and we're back to the Empire this week.
We are.
Indeed.
Quality faction, this.
Hey, very quality faction, sure, let's go with that. So this is the last ship that we're going to talk about from the Battle of Yavin.
Yeah.
Through all of them now, we're going to talk about the TIE Advanced X1, not V1.
No, V1 is the Inquisitor ship.
Yes, version 1, that's the way I think of it. It's like the alpha version of the TIE Advanced. The TIE Advanced, the proper fair dinkum thing that Vader had. Oh, fair dinkum is an Australian slang thing for really good, you guys.
Yeah.
Yes, so this is the ship that Vader flew in the Battle of Yavin. That's the only screen time it ever got, as far as I'm aware.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. In the extended universe, it is flown by other characters, but I think pretty much the accepted film canon is it's just Vader's ship.
Yeah.
And as such, usually in the Hangar Bay, we do try to talk about all the different pilots, but we do have to face the fact that Vader is just so hype.
He's just really good.
Just really good
on
indeed.
the ship. It works really well. 3-Force.
3-Force, Initiative 6.
Yeah.
Something very highly sought after. In fact, until Wave 3 comes out, he will be the only one with those stats. After Wave 3, we'll also have Anakin Skywalker, which is very interesting. Do you reckon those two characters ever met?
Not in the same room.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
You never see them in the same place. Having said all that, there are some interesting other pilots on this platform. Zetric Strom and Marek Steele seem to be popular amongst some of the other players. We'll talk about them as they come in these lists. Apart from that, not a whole heap of interest in this. We're getting like the odd list with generics and stuff, but it's very much centered around named pilots. In terms of the stat line of this ship, moving from 1st to 2nd edition, it lost its evade action. It does have focus to red barrel roll, target lock and barrel roll. Its upgrades is sensor, missile, modification, and the stat line reads 2 red dice, 3 green dice, 3 hull, and 2 shield. So a pretty sort of dodgy TIE fighter type thing. If you have a look at the dial, it's pretty comparable to most TIE dials. It doesn't have the 1 hard turns, but it does have the 1 straight and banks, unlike most TIEs. So pretty comparable in terms of the quality of the dial. Also, one very important thing is the baked-in ability. Advanced targeting computer. While you perform an attack, if you have a lock on the defender, you add a dice and then change a hit to a crit.
Yeah, you don't normally get a lot of extra dice in version 2.
No, but it sort of changes the raw stats of the ship. It basically has 3 red dice, although arguably better. If you don't have a lock against the ship that you're shooting, you feel pretty bad because you lose a lot of value. But if you do, you essentially get... it is better than having 3 red dice because it's 3 red dice plus you get to upgrade one of your results. The old version was you just add a critical result, which is arguably better and worse. Adding more dice changes, it interacts with different upgrades and that kind of thing. So it's not strictly better or worse than the old add a crit. I think in most cases it's worse. I think you'd probably just want the extra crit.
Yeah.
If you don't roll any hits with any of your 3 dice, you don't get to change anything to a crit, and then life feels pretty bad.
Which is why most people add fire control system to this ship.
Indeed. Fire control system was 3 points, now 2 points after the points change. Really, really solid. In fact, we should just quickly mention the points change in general because Vader, the most expensive pilot on the ship, went from 70 points down to 65, which is hugely impactful. He was already massively more expensive than the next highest pilot. He's still, 19 points more? It doesn't matter. Vader's awesome.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that fire control system went down by a point is hugely impactful as well.
Especially for the other pilots that you don't always see.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of this... some more of them are coming out of the woodworks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're actually pretty decent. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Vader is definitely better than the other pilots. He is also 19 points more than Marek Steele and X more points than everyone else as well. So
but at the same time, though, Marek Steele's in Initiative 5, Darth Vader's Initiative 6.
Initiative 6 with 3-Force, yeah.
So
it's a huge upgrade. It's a huge upgrade to be sure. So we'll mention that as we go through these lists. But there's pretty much no subbing out Vader for Marek. There's such a huge points chasm that you don't do that. Yeah,
you borderline add an extra ship.
Pretty much. You'd add an extra ship before you think about upgrading to Vader or something like that. All right, let's dive into these lists. And before we do, a quick PSA. Please be very cautious, guys, when you submit a list down below. We had a couple of really interesting lists that actually used this combination of pilots, but unfortunately the points were completely wrong and it made it very difficult to assess.
Yeah.
I do have to be strict about this. We have to only do lists that have correct points assigned to them. Otherwise, it's very difficult for us to fix it all in post. And I've got to look at all the stats, make all these graphics and everything. So I'm just making a hard and fast rule there. Yeah. But we saw this combination with Zetric Strom and Marek Steel, and we got very interested.
Yeah, so I had a list that was similar, and because of that, I've then changed one ship from, which was a TIE Striker, to a TIE Advanced, and I think this looks even better now. We have Zetric Strom with fire control system and afterburners.
Marek Steel has the same upgrades as well as marksmanship.
And Rex Labrath has Duke and fire control system.
And trying to find lists that balance out the TIE D is always quite difficult.
Yeah.
2 Advanced feels like a decent bit of value.
Yeah, not only that, we've got 2 5s and a 3 with initiatives there. So
yeah.
They
and a 6-point bid.
Well.
6-point bid seems okay. It's interesting, while I was at the Australian Nationals, we played a bit more of a casual tournament on day 2, and I actually saw a TIE Defender plus Darth Vader flying around as a list. Did struggle a bit. I flew against it and I didn't find it too challenging. 2 ship builds do seem to be in a bit of an awkward space right now in 2nd edition.
Yeah.
And you can see that you can comfortably actually fit 2 advanced alongside if you don't use Vader. And that's what I was talking about before with the points difference. It's pretty significant. And you do have to appreciate, especially looking at Rex Labrath now, an 82-point buy-in, especially when Vader's 75 points.
Yeah.
Vader's really competitive.
I could almost drop the TIE Defender and put in Vader instead.
You could absolutely.
But then I'm not flying a TIE Defender, Nick.
I know, you want to fly a TIE Defender. That's fair enough. Rex Labrath is not the TIE Defender pilot that cares about target locks. That is Colonel Vessery. So you could think about putting him in instead, because he pairs quite nicely with TIE Advanced. Bear in mind that his buying cost is actually 4 points more, so you could just switch them out and you only have a 2-point bid instead of a 6-point bid.
Yeah.
Which isn't terrible, considering the amount of upside.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the idea with the Rex Labrath and Marek Steel and Zetric Storm. All 3 of them are doing things with the damage cards.
I agree. I love the way that pairs with Marek Steel.
Yeah.
The fact that you can dig for very important... you can dig for direct hits. There are so many of them in the damage deck that looking at 3... your odds of actually hitting one is pretty good.
Yeah, so there's 5? No. There's more, isn't there?
I don't know. They've changed. It used to be 7 out of 33. It's something close. They did change it. But the 3-card dig that you do with Marek Steel's hit is pretty significant because if you find a direct hit, you now have 2 other platforms that can re-expose it. And the way direct hit works now, every time you expose it, you get another damage card and unexpose it. Yeah. You can just do it over and over again and add more damage cards.
Yeah, my brother normally flies one of the X-Wings, Thane Kyrell, and he's now just, flip a damage before anything happens. And you're like, that's not fair.
Yeah, Thane's really good. Really good. I've flown against that. Didn't fare that well. I do like the way this is working. I will say, though, you've got to be real careful with Marek Steel here because when he dies... That's kind of it. I mean, at the very least, you still have Zetric Storm, who is decent at getting crits himself.
Yeah.
If your opponent's flying initiative 6s and he just arc dodges, there's not a lot you can do about it, unfortunately.
No.
You got to play the zoning game with Rex Labrath and Zetric Storm, which you can do.
Yeah, I mean, a TIE Defender is fairly nimble.
Yeah, absolutely. I like this. I think it's going to have better and worse matchups.
Yeah.
This is very interesting against those spam Rebel generic lists, like we saw take Toronto System Open.
Yeah.
Because your initiative 3 is going to fly after them, and you can really, really punish them with that. So, might be meta dependent, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think I might go back to the Empire for a while and fly this.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of really cool stuff coming out in the last couple of waves. Okay, let's have a look at a list by our patrons. Captain Bojangles, thank you for supporting the Patreon and thank you for submitting this on Discord. A 4 of build with Vader, Omicron Group Pilot, Del Meeko, and Gideon Husk.
Yeah, now Darth Vader has hate, fire control systems, and afterburners.
The Omicron Group Pilot has Palpatine and Jamming Beam.
And Del Meeko and Gideon Husk both have trick shot.
Call for Papa Palpatine. Here he is. Now, it is worth pointing out that, yes, you could upgrade the Lambda pilot instead of using Palp, and that does seem to be the preferred way people are using the Lambda class shuttle these days.
But
Palp's really fun.
Having Palp.
I like having that on defense for those TIE fighters. It feels pretty good.
Yeah.
Del Meeko giving you more rerolls in defense is decent. You're more likely to see focus results. It seems really decent, especially with Vader, who can get damage through pretty consistently.
Yeah.
Good to see you've added on the free upgrade in Jamming Beam. I don't think you're going to want to use it here in most situations.
But, I mean, still.
Yeah, you might get rid of a pesky evade token and hammer Sunterfell and just feel great about yourself. But yeah, 99% of the time. It's just there because it's free.
Yeah.
And it looks kind of cool. The Lambda, very fun right now. I love that it can shoot backwards.
Yeah, it does help, doesn't it?
It feels very relevant.
Changes everything.
You just can't punish it anymore like you could in first edition, which is not a terrible thing. And Vader hate fire control system afterburners. Look, I think if you do want to cut something, and I'm not suggesting you do, I think afterburners is the first thing you cut. Because at 70 points, that is really good. Think about the Vader from the first era of second edition, just having hate and fire control system for free. That's essentially what's gone on here. It's a very competitive 70 points. But yeah, if you have space for afterburners, do it.
Well, I don't think there's not really much else that you can add. Maybe you could add the title to the Omicron.
Yeah, you could. Then you've got a 2-point bid instead of a 6-point bid.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem all that important.
No.
You may choose an enemy ship at range 0 to 3 of the ship you coordinated, so you're giving more target locks to the Lambda. It's value. I don't think it's worth the 4 points. But yeah, I think ultimately a 6-point bid's decent. If anything, I'd just raise the bid. But I don't think you need to. Initiative 1s, 4s, and a 6. There's no 5s. 5 is the most important thing you need to think about when bidding.
Yeah.
Decent. And always happy to see 4 of builds in the Empire. If everything's just efficient enough, things can work quite well. I will say, Captain Bojangles, it is absolutely worth looking at Admiral Sloane. Just in terms of tournament play right now, it's a point less than the Emperor. And something that people are really speculating on in terms of power level. Really decent card.
Yeah, but having the Force with Emperor Palpatine that you can then use for Del Meeko or Hask, I feel like...
With their rerolls. It's absolutely... There's decent upside there. I'm just thinking like a tournament grinder.
Yeah.
I have a habit of doing that.
Yeah.
But Palp's awesome. Would love to see more Palp in second edition. Moving right along to this list by Bartimus, with Oiken and Vader.
Yes, now this was called Vader's Lawnmower.
Vader's Lawnmower, indeed. Oiken has Intimidation, Fifth Brother, Tactical Scrambler, and Dauntless.
And Darth Vader has Fire Control System, Proton Rockets, and Afterburners.
And a big discount on this list because this was submitted before the points change.
Yeah, so Oiken has a points reduction, Dauntless has a points reduction.
Fifth Brother.
Yep.
Vader.
Fire Control
System. And I think Afterburners was 8 points as well. So yeah, this has a 24-point bid now. I think we should look at adding another ship here for sure.
Definitely.
I mean, if that was Marek still on the advanced, I'd definitely say look at adding Vader. But we could just put a TIE fighter in alongside this, and I think it would be pretty decent. Indeed, with 24 points left, you could put an Academy pilot in and have 1 point. Or you could cut the Proton Rockets on Vader, which I'm a bit iffy on in the first place.
If we cut the Proton Rockets, we've got then a better TIE fighter and possibly even a Force upgrade on Vader.
Yeah, and we were saying before, I think it's hate.
Yeah.
It's got to be hate for sure. I'm seeing people speculate on various different things. Instinctive Aim is a fun build on Vader, but Hate's
just better.
Hate is solid. I would not be surprised if it went to 4 or 5 points the next points change.
Yeah.
Having a look at everything around Hate on the list of Force upgrades,
Yeah, no, it's it's the best thing for those points.
Absolutely. On any dark side user, absolutely consider it. So, yes, if we take off the rocket, we put on hate, we have 28 points remaining. Like, we could consider putting on Night Beast here. And if we do that, we have a 2-point bid, which I think is fine with this group of ships.
Yeah. Alternatively, you could go a Black Squadron.
Yep.
And maybe put a Talon on there.
Yeah, check on Crackshot. Why not? Or Marksmanship if you really want to do that. Like, I think it's probably Crackshot, if I'm to be honest. But yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't just add on the other ship. Also, if you put an Academy Pilot on, you have a 5-point bid. And if you really want to bid, if that matters with Initiative 4s and 6s in your local play area, maybe have a think about that. But yeah. It's really cool to see when you happen to build a list that uses so much stuff that went down in points.
Oh,
put a TIE fighter in there.
Yeah.
Why not?
Feels good, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I already like the way this list functions. Captain Oiken, I really want him to do well. I really want Captain Oiken to do well. He's coming out in wave 4.
Yeah.
It is 4, yeah, that's right. So we'll have Decimators in hyperspace. Hopefully, though, by that stage, FFG has found that sweet spot to make large base ships relevant. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Oiken's just so much fun. Just shoot at range 0 and just take actions and just charge your opponent. It's
just
so cool.
Keep going. Yeah.
It's so cool. I love that was a tactic in first edition and they just leaned into it in second edition. Really want to see him on the table. He is a spicy pilot.
Yeah.
One last list we have here. This is from our YouTube comments by Joseph Groves.
Yes, this is Darth Vader, Marek Steel, and Major Vermeil.
Vader has hate, fire control system, prockets, and afterburners.
Marek Steel has marksmanship, fire control system, concussion missiles, and afterburners.
And Major Vermeil on the TIE Reaper has trick shot, ISB slicer, and tack officer.
Yeah, so this is a bit interesting, isn't it?
It's very, very interesting. The first thing I look at, which jumps out at me as potentially something unideal that's getting rid of your bid, is those rockets on those TIE Advanced.
Yeah.
But look, if you don't think the bid's relevant, that's fine. Cutting them both gives you a 13-point bid, which is so nice alongside Initiative 5 and 6.
Yeah, personally, I'm not a big fan of the ISB slicer.
It's interesting. For 3 points, preventing the loss of jam tokens, it's a bit narrow. Your opponent might just find ways to get rid of it through free actions somewhere. Yeah. There are a lot of things that just blank it out.
Yeah, and then also, if you take off the ISB slicer, you could then think about putting Krennic in.
Yeah, you can think about Krennic for sure. But if you take off those rockets and both of those crew members, you could go Krennic and Grand Moff Tarkin. Only problem there is this list is specifically hyperspace legal, and by doing that, that's no longer the case.
Yeah.
Let's just say, theoretically, you don't use Grand Moff Tarkin and just put on Krennic instead. It still seems pretty decent. And then you can still keep on the TAC officer. So if you cut away those missiles and take off the ISB slicer, put on Krennic instead, you have an 11-point bid. And look, if you feel like that is relevant, I think that's absolutely something worth looking at.
Yeah. Also, you could consider maybe putting something else other than Trick Shot on Vermeil.
Yes, if you really want to. I do like Trick Shot. Yeah. Man, it's still really good for 2 points.
Yeah.
Still really good. Trick Shot, still legit, you guys.
Also, you could take off Trick Shot and maybe put Duke on Vermeil.
Yeah, I like the way Duke plays around with his ability. You have a lot of upside to getting rid of your opponent's tokens. Duke prevents them from... It basically negates one of their results, and it means Vermeil can just attack better.
Yeah.
Then you're feeling pretty good. You've got a nice, aggressive Vermeil build here.
Yeah, and then you've got 8 points, and I think that's all you need.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think that's pretty decent. Just a conversation around the rockets on those TIE Advanced. Do be aware that the advanced targeting computer specifically talks about primary attacks. And that doesn't mean you should never take rockets, but there is value to be had there that you're not using all the time.
Yeah, it's sort of like with you and the T-70s. You've got to always remember that you're rolling one less die.
Yeah, for sure, unless you use the cannons. You've got to be very careful about the way your secondary weapons interplay with abilities that either do or don't care about secondary weapons.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. You also have to be very careful about secondary weapons because there is a lot of opportunity cost for using things like prockets and concussion missiles. But missiles in general is the ordnance that requires you to be in certain positions, your opponent to have ships in certain positions. You've got to be very, very careful with those guys.
Yeah.
By taking the ordnance off your TIE Advanced, you're basically opening up and letting them breathe and letting the decision-making process during your games be a little bit more open, especially on Vader. I feel like that's really good. Even on Marek Steel. The fact that he cares specifically about getting crits through, so at the same time, wouldn't you just want to use that burnt-in ability?
Yeah.
I feel like that's just all I want to do. I feel like having a missile on there might be a bit of a distraction. Sorry, Joseph, if I'm coming up with a bit harsh here. You just got to be aware, like, you don't always have to use up all the slots on your ship.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it's often better not to. Always focus on the most efficient things. And things that sort of are counterintuitive with things that you already have on your ship, baked-in abilities, other upgrades, whatever, are things to always watch out for.
Definitely.
Yes, that's absolutely my closing thoughts on that, for sure. But I do like these platforms together. The 2 Advanced plus something else is decent. Major Vermeil, a TIE Defender, a Lambda. It's pretty cool. And I think the Advanced is an interesting place right now.
Yeah.
Especially Vader. Especially now things like Whisper and Redline are far less degenerate than they used to be. It seems like a good time for the TIE Advanced to actually take some tournaments.
Definitely.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like us to talk about one of your lists in a future episode, please, down in the YouTube comments, the points and everything, and also please a link to that list within your favourite squad builder makes our job so much easier.
So much easier.
So much easier. Also, if you're part of the Patron Discord or you want to be part of that, the links for all that are down in the description. Please submit that on the Patron Discord under the relevant channel. We always make sure every week we do cover at least a few patron lists, and considering there are so few patrons versus so many commenters on YouTube, thousands over here versus like 30 over here, your odds of getting onto these videos is much higher.
Especially if you're new.
Absolutely, yes. Oh, one more thing I want to add. Thank you for bringing that up. We are making a point of trying to get through newer patrons. Make sure that we cover a list from everyone at some point or another. I realise some people only submit lists on their favourite factions. Or not everyone submits that many lists. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, we're working through these, and I'm making a big effort to make sure that we highlight everyone, because really appreciate all the support you patrons are giving me. It's very, very significant. I can't stress that enough. In fact, I think in the coming videos I'm going to talk about some things I'm upgrading here. Talk about all the stuff in the new house. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, guys, enough rambling. Thanks for watching. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Reddit. And then we'll catch you in the next video.
Bye.